Hello everybody, my name is Joern Redler. I'm from Mainz University of Applied Sciences in Germany. And together with my colleague, Professor Joern from Ostfalia University of Applied Sciences, also in Germany, I'm working on changes in brand management due to Generation Z as new consumer generations. Today, I'd like to present some first findings, first insights in how this impacts on private label product preference. I have organized my short presentation as follows. First, I would like to give some starting points, some background information, and then I would like to mention the research question and explain a bit about the research design. I would address some findings from our first study and also cover the next steps we're going to take and the limitations we had with this study. So this is the agenda for our very short presentation. Coming to the background, we first need to look at private label brands. Private label brands are defined as those brands that are owned, controlled, and mostly exclusively sold by a retailer. So they are, as a trademark, they are owned by a retail chain or a single retailer. They are managed by the retailer, and they are in opposition to national brands which are managed by manufacturers. As you can see from the table on the right-hand side of this slide, there has been a lot of research done, looking at how private label brands impact on buying behavior, how successful they are, how they change retailer business, and so on. Of course, this table just mentions the most important studies. There has been much more research in this area. Especially in the last years, but also in the years before, private label brands have been very successful, and they have gained much market share in retailers' business. So they are an interesting topic to look at. And also compared to what they started from, compared to their initial role as being kind of generics as a product alternative, today they have developed as high quality products, and they are really not to, so they are almost the same product, or even of a better product quality. So from a consumer's point of view, there's not much difference anymore between private label brands and national brands. So this has changed a lot. And also these developments have been covered by former research on private label brands. Looking at Generation Z, we talk about consumers which have been born 1995 or later on. And this Generation Z is characterized as having some special characteristics compared to former generations like Gen X or Gen Y. As you can see from my short exhibit on the bottom of the right-hand side bottom, you see that typical characterizing attitudes cover self-actualization, but also traditional beliefs, confidence, optimism, and a high peer acceptance. They also have differences in terms of how they communicate or how they behave in groups. But what is most interesting for us is the different set of values they seem to have, which is also an expression of different lifestyles. Considering that Generation Z has a different value set and a different lifestyle compared to to former generations, you can assume that they will also have a different purchase behavior. So the way they buy products might be different compared to other generations. That is the interesting point for our study, because if buying behavior is changed, how will this influence purchasing or preference of private label brands? That is why our overall research question is, how does the upcoming generation's value system relate to private label brands purchase? It is a question that hasn't been addressed yet, which is quite surprising, but it hasn't been. So we wanted to start this kind of research, and obviously this is clearly a more exploratory approach. For our study, we used a huge sample which has more than 3,000 participants, and it covered more than 2,500 Generation Z consumers. The sample is taken from a panel by a German drugstore retail chain. That is why it is almost exclusively female, but covered many Gen Z consumers. It was a survey-based study, so we distributed a short online survey via their Facebook channel and tried to motivate consumers to participate in our study by having a lottery where they could gain some extra offers. Answering the questionnaire took about 5 minutes per participant, so it was a very short survey. In our questionnaire, we included measures for gender relevant values, which were taken from an established national study in Germany. We also included measures for quality evaluation of product of private label brand, and a relative comparative evaluation to national brands, and also measures for the worthiness of private label brand purchase. As mentioned, we had a more exploratory approach when analyzing the data. Interestingly, we could find some relations between typical values of Generation Z and their private label brand preference. When analyzing the data, we first factor analyzed the value items and came up with 4 factors that represented the values. As you can see from the table, we have one factor called altruism, which covered items like I help others or I engage in political life. We had a factor for performance, which refers to items like having a good education is important, or I would like to have a professional life. We had hedonism and sense of family. Comparing these factors with the measures for quality and worthiness of purchase, we found some links, some relations. And that is interesting for further research in private label brand management. So as you can see, these are small correlations, but these are significant correlations which might serve as a first hint toward something that is behind it. And this is interesting for us, as we would like to research this a bit more. So in particular, we had altruism, the factor altruism being related to perceptions of private labels being superior to national brands. So the more altruism the generation showed, the more they judged private label brands being superior. And we had a relationship between performance orientation and hedonism, between these two factors, and worthiness of purchase, but surprisingly not with quality evaluations. Clearly, the factor sense of family is not linked to any of the attitude or preference measures. So what we have here is first ideas for more research, and we could explore some interesting links. So in our next steps, we would like to use this as a starting point and go into the altruism factor for researching and better understanding what this means for private label brand management. Obviously, this is quite interesting, and obviously this will impact a lot on how to manage national brands. National brands, but also private label brands in general. If you have to do with upcoming consumer generations like Gen Z. Of course, this is just a starting point, and of course our study has severe limitations. For example, it's just a very first exploration. It is a very specific sector which we analyzed. It is a German-only sample, and it is a more or less female sample. So what we would like to do is do more testing with other scales, with more industries, with maybe other countries, but also with mixed samples. But we are convinced that this is something that needs more exploration. The link between altruism and also hedonism and quality evaluations of private label brands. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for your attention. We would be really happy to learn about your comments, about your ideas. If you have any ideas for cooperation, please do not hesitate to contact us. We are happy to hear from you. Once again, thank you, thanks a lot. And now we have some time left for your questions.